Two men lead the way to the police officers at the second line.
So that's me at the front, and I literally just got out of jail for that after like 3 years. But I'm here to tell you why every January 6er needs a pardon and why the government has been lying to you about January 6th. So let's start with the first thing, the big lie they told that day.
Every one of those who were convicted deserves to be convicted. The idea that they didn't kill somebody just went in and broke down doors.
On that day, 140 law enforcement officers were injured, and some died.
So the left and the entire media go crazy for 3 years saying that the January 6ers murdered a guy, except that that was a total lie, and he died of natural causes. Oh well. 4 people did die on January 6th, but they were all protesters. We're about to see some of that footage now.
That unarmed woman was Ashley Babbitt, shot dead by a Capitol police officer. This next woman is Roseanne Boylan. Keep in mind, the police said she died of a drug overdose. You decide.
Here we see Officer Lila Morris mercilessly beating Roseanne Boylan as she lies on the ground unconscious. She literally loses grip of the baton from swinging so frantically. That doesn't look like a drug overdose to me.
There were essentially no investigations launched into either of these police officers.
Not only did they not investigate it, they actually promoted this guy who shot and killed an unarmed woman. They honored this police officer at the Super Bowl. You know, the same one who was beating that woman lying unconscious on the ground. What a hero. Facing these ridiculous and unfair sentences, sadly a lot of J6ers took their own lives. I can speak from firsthand experience that when the entire media has you in their sights, it's really hard to carry on.
For pushing a fence that the government admitted did not touch anybody and trespassing, I was facing a potential 101 years in prison if I was found guilty on everything.
Here's a great example of how misleading the media is and how January 6ers have been treated. On the left is a selectively edited picture. On the right is what actually happened.
To be transparent and honest, and because I'm not the Biden DOJ, I'm going to show you the whole clip and let you decide for yourself. Keep in mind, this was at the initial breach, so this is how the police acted from the very start. Maybe this is why 4 protesters were killed that day. Decide for yourself.
So as you can see from this angle, I never touched the police officer. I was trying to help him. I was trying to pull this guy off of the cop. And then this guy comes in and delivers a huge sucker punch. He almost breaks my cheekbone just for trying to help. Not surprisingly, the J6 committee never shows this.
But that certainly wasn't the only instance of police brutality that day. There's more. Watch.
Let's watch as this guy gets pushed off the ledge by a police officer. Thankfully he's okay, but this could have easily killed him. Why would he do that? And then there's the missing evidence that's been deleted. To this day, January 6ers are still fighting to get all the footage released.
And then there's the entrapment angle. To this day, the government and FBI refuse to tell us how many undercovers were there that day. I was at the front right next to Ray Epps, and I heard what he said.
This is Ray Epps, who urged people to go into the building the night before, and the whole crowd chanted, "Fed, Fed, Fed." As you can see here, he was present at the start of the whole thing, and I heard him whisper into my co-defendant's ear. He said, "We need more people." If you don't believe me, there's video of it. I'll share it in the comments. Here he is in a text to his son literally claiming he orchestrated it. And yet he was only given probation. And there's video of either Undercover or Antifa changing clothes in the bushes.
And if that still wasn't bad enough, they charged people, hundreds of them like myself, with a 20-year felony just for showing up, called obstruction of an official proceeding. This had never been used before or since, but they broke it out for the J6ers.
So the 1512 is a witness tampering charge. But the government chose one little part of it and used that against every January 6er and Donald Trump to give him a 20-year felony just for showing up. This serious federal felony had never been used like this before. Eventually, the Supreme Court had to step in and overturn it, but not before hundreds of people went to prison for it.
Every January 6er could have just been charged where they lived. Every state has its own federal courthouses, but they were worried we might get a fair sentence out there. So they made sure to drag us all to Washington, D.C., the most Democrat part of the country, so we could be housed by guards that absolutely hated and abused us, and judges that they knew would fall in line.
As you can see, it's the most Democrat area in the country. You got 12 jurors who absolutely hated Republicans. There was no way to get a fair trial here.
Many J6ers were charged with aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, a 20-year federal felony. Let's take a look at some of these deadly weapons. Alright, but if a Democrat political protester punched a female cop in the face, which is worse than what almost any J6er did, if that happened in the same exact city, with the same exact police force, and the same exact prosecutor, I mean, that person will be looking at years in prison just like the J6ers, right?
Wrong. 48 hours of community service. While hundreds of J6ers are rotting in prison for far less, this guy's given 48 hours of community service for punching a female police officer in the face. Here's the Democrats storming the Capitol and interfering with the peaceful transfer of power. And they get let go the next day. No decades-long prison sentences for them.
Pardon all of the January 6ers. These people have undergone absolute hell for the last 4 years for what other people aren't even arrested for. They underwent pre-dawn raids by the FBI, and they were dragged across the country to Washington, D.C., where they sat for years waiting for trial in horrible pre-trial conditions. They had their names ran through the mud by the media, and all the while, we don't even know how many informants or undercovers were there that day. 4 patriots did die on January 6th, but they were all protesters. And there were also several people who took their own lives facing such ridiculous sentences and media slander. We as a country are better than this than to go after our political opponents. The time has come to free and pardon all of the January 6ers. Thank you.